How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and you're about to watch or listen to a conversation that is general and impersonal in nature, one that is very biased, since both me and the interviewee own shares of this company that is going to be discussed. And it's also a conversation full of forward looking statements and probably a lot of hopes. So proceed at your own risk. Mr. Sykes, thank you for investing your time in me, sir.
Oh, no worries. Thank you very much, Antonio, for having me back on.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this update because it is been a while since we last spoke. Why don't we maybe do it that way? Wouldn't you give me like a 2 minute update on what you've done for me as a shareholder since we last spoke a couple of months ago?
A couple of months ago, it's been that long, eh? Well, we completed our drill program. We wrapped that up by the beginning of August, basically. Drilled 22,000 meters, 22,500. Very happy with all the results. Drilled about 80 drill holes in total. And on our last hole out of the project, we decided to just do some reconnaissance exploration, and we intersected visible nickel copper sulfides. So we're patiently waiting on the assays for that, but that's very encouraging because that was also near surface and no association with uranium at all. It's a pure play nickel copper sulfide discovery. So we've been successful on all of our exploration targets thus far and happy with that. But we've also had assay results coming out finally for a lot of our drill holes. And I think we've reported over half of the drill holes that we've drilled thus far. And we've had some very exciting results. I'm honestly quite enthusiastic about the results that we've received. They are better than what I had expected based on the scintillometer results that we had released previously as basically guidelines for the investment community, for the people out there reading the news. Just scintillometer results, radioactivity results are to let you know that, hey, we have intersected uranium. We've confirmed that it's uranium with the scintillometer as best as possible. There's always some ways that the scintillometer can mess up. But we've now followed those up with the assay results. And like I said, they have exceeded my expectations by quite a bit. So for example, hole 52, where we're hitting close to 30 meters at over 0.5%, starting right at the overburden contact, blew me away. Just unbelievable. That's phenomenal in our eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that update and for all that you've been doing. I do want to talk about the drill results obviously here in a second. Is it too early to speculate on the nickel property and what you plan on doing with it, what you hope on doing with it? If it turns out to be something, are you going to spin it off, try and sell it immediately? I don't know, develop it. What do you think?
Too early to speculate for sure. We want to see the assays come back. Like I said, we visibly confirmed that they were nickel copper sulfides, and that's just saying, okay, this is pentlandite, this is chalcopyrite. You've got pyrite in the mix, and you've got pyrrhotite in the mix. So we need some results to come back to say, hey, yes, you guys were right with what you saw with your eyes. We didn't have an XRF at site, so we couldn't confirm it that way. But if the results come back and we're happy with it, then we'll do some more exploration on it. We've been talking internally already about that because it was so shallow, and we were pretty confident that we have followed the structure up the surface. But it was a very quick thing at the end of the season that we did, and so we'll get out there and do some more digging around. And yeah, we've been discussing about putting 10 drill holes into that, but again, need the results first.
Okay, yeah, but it's good you're telling me about internal discussions about it being 10 holes, because it helps me know that the focus is still going to be on your uranium properties, and we're going to talk about your plans for the next drill program, obviously. But it's good to know that your focus remains on uranium. Let's go back to those results though that you recently released, the assay results. I had something that I noted in my notes, is that first of all you call it high grade uranium, but I'm wondering why you do that. I mean, if it you say that it's high grade, you consider it to be high grade uranium if it's above 0.5%, so half a percent basically. But wouldn't it need to be over 2% or something along those lines for you to be able to call it high grade, given that it's so close to the Athabasca Basin?
The terminology, like there is no defined terminology for high grade. If you're in Africa, if you're exploring in Africa, like let's consider Rossing, for example, where their average grade is between 0.1 and 0.3 percent U3O8. If not even that, sorry, yeah, it's about 0.01 and 0.03% U3O8. And then all of a sudden you're hitting 0.1 U3O8. Is that considered high grade? I would say that it would be, because you're basically 3 to 10 times your background grade, which is that would be encouraging enough to be locally called high grade. So what we've done is we've looked at the global average grade of uranium, which is about 0.1, 0.15. We said, okay, well, if we're hitting 3 times as much to 5 times as much as that, should that not be considered high grade, even though we're in the Athabasca, which is renowned for high grade? And yeah, a lot of people would consider anything above 1% to be high grade, anything above 10% to be high grade. So there's no textbook term for what high grade is. We just define it on our end to be greater than 0.5%. And I'll be blatantly honest with you. One of the reasons we do so is because it catches people's eyes in a news release. You say high grade. So, but again, we're still in my viewpoint, we're still doing it ethically, that we're not calling something that's 0.1% to be high grade. We're above the global average grade, which Athabasca is known for being above the average grade, global average grade. So we're hitting those parameters, but it also allows us to report more mineralization. And if you look at some of the mines in the past where they're mining 0.2%, 0.3%, 0.4%, if 0.5 is higher than those mined grades, should that still not be considered high grade? So it could be an ethical question. Which, like I said, I feel strongly convinced that, we're saying things accurately right on our end. And it's a debatable question, guaranteed.
Okay. Yeah, well, fair point. I also appreciate your honesty about, putting it in a headline. It's important for people to see that. Obviously, you don't want to lie to them, and you're not doing that. So I guess fair game. I did a quick calculation, so I could be wrong, but 0.5, so 0.5% of a ton, that would be 5 kilograms. You multiply that by 2.2 to bring it to pounds, that'd be 11 pounds. 11 pounds times $55 uranium at the spot, which is obviously not something anybody would be producing at. It's a $605 rock.
Yeah.
If you were a gold company, you'd be called the highest grade in Canada in a while, probably, I guess. So
exactly.
Is that a fair calculation though that I'm doing?
Very fair, absolutely very fair calculation. And that's it. You gotta consider what we're saying in context. Like, there are different ways to look at it. If you compare apples to apples, apples to oranges are still fruit. One's got more vitamin C than the other. And that's basically what you've just done. You've looked at it in a different viewpoint, which, when it comes to an economic sense, that's considered high grade gold.
You will also have to know the costs and be able to figure out what the margin is, because obviously the margin is the most important thing for a business. That's what I'm figuring out with my cafe, and it probably isn't too different in the mining world, because it comes down to the margin, comes down to having higher profit margins. But the fact that, one way to get higher profit margins would be for you to, potentially forward-looking statements and all that, but for you to potentially open pit this project. But what about the fact that most of the higher grade, and I do mean above 0.5% mineralization, is most of it is deeper than 100 meters, and some are at depths roughly of 300 meters. Do you think you have the geography, the space, basically, to make it a potential open pit? Because I thought like 100 meters was the cutoff for open pit projects, or...
Depends. It's great questions. A lot of things to consider, and margin is the key to any business, right? You don't have a negative margin, why are you in business? With having the mineralization at surface, and that was one of the big reasons for the headline, the way we designed it that way, saying we've got 7 drill holes within 50 meters of surface, is to show that exact reason, that if you started an open pit, you scrape off the overburden right away. We've shown at least 4 drill holes with mineralization starting right there. So once the overburden is gone, you're extracting ore immediately in an open pit scenario. That's positive NPV as quick as possible. So basically your stripping ratio is boom, overburden gone, and you start mining. It's not a very common thing. So as so we'd have to understand how wide that mineralization is and how extensive it is. But then as you would dig deeper, you would uncover more mineralization as you get deeper, as we've shown, and as you've just said, a lot of our high grade is around 100 meter, or around that 100-meter mark. It's also a design of how we drilled originally, but we are finding more high grade that is above 100 meters. Is 100 meters too deep for an open pit? I can't answer that in all pure, factual, with all pure fact and be completely accurate on that. But what I can do is just compare it to other commodities, other jurisdictions, as well as the Athabasca. So in another commodity, so gold, copper, whatever, you can do an open pit to a lot of depths. And even your starting depth could even be deeper than 100 meters. But they don't. The thing is, they can do it in those environments because the rock types are amenable to such an operation. That the walls around the pit are supportive, and they're not going to collapse and crush down on you, and they don't have dewatering issues. But that's where the problem is with the Athabasca, is that the Athabasca is a sandstone sink, basically, with a heck of a lot of water flowing through it. So with a lot of the open pits that have been done in the Athabasca in the past, which were underneath 100 meters of sandstone cover, they still had water issues, but it was at that point where they can dewater it and then extract the ore from at the unconformity between the basement rocks and the sandstone, or even in the basement rocks themselves, such as the Sioux Sea pit. Mm. We don't have that issue. We don't have the sandstone overlying our deposit. It would be off to the side. It could be on a possible sidewall, but it's not a very thick sandstone sequence. So we figure that, if Accio could become an open pit scenario, we don't think that the water is a big issue there. So we do believe that we can get down to those depths. And like I said, if you're mining and extracting ore immediately after scraping off the overburden, and you're going to be extracting ore as you continue getting down to that 100-meter depth, you're constantly removing money from the ground.
Is it more expensive to mine uranium open pit because of, I don't know, some metallurgical reason or something along those lines, or would it be the same as say gold or another commodity?
Every mining operation I've seen in the world, regardless of commodity, regardless of jurisdiction, open pits are always much easier to mine, much more cost effective to mine than an underground scenario. Always. So if we take apples to apples on this one and compare an open pit in the Athabasca jurisdiction versus an underground in the Athabasca, it's going to be more cost effective.
Yeah. Of course. Do you have any ideas of what mining a ton of ore in the Athabasca costs today?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately not. No.
Okay. Well, I'll try maybe to talk to different. I don't know too many producers though that do open pit stuff in the Athabasca, but
that's it.
Well, there might be a reason for that, though. There might be a reason for that, and that's also that brings me to another point, which would be the environmental impact and the permits around it, I guess, because you say, by the way, in your news release that you've used a helicopter to support this whole drill program, despite you being about 20 miles or 35 kilometers away from infrastructure, to quote, lessen any ground-induced environmental impact within the project area. That's what you say. So, I mean, if that's already an issue, or if you're already trying to reduce the impact on the environment, will there ever be an open pit here? And just how challenging do you think permitting one would be?
That's a brilliant question. You've done your homework. No, that's it's two different things for sure. On the exploration side of things, we do want to show that we have a very low impact on the ground, and it's been beautiful. You can fly over this area and all you just see is a ring of where the trees were cut. The ground is not damaged at all. So it's on that end of things. One of the reasons why we do that is if there's a chance that Accio never goes forward, then we haven't affected the ground. Okay, it's as simple as that. If Accio goes forward, there's no doubt that there would have to be, you're going to clear an area, you're going to start mining. And the most recent open pits were Orano's Sioux pits. They were still going in the mid 2000s. So, it's not, they're not uncommon. Rabbit Lake, that area had a few open pits. Clough Lake, there's been a number of open pits, more open pits than there have been underground mines for sure. And so but they've been small, and that's the good thing about these things. They've always been small. To what extent would any damage be done? Like I said, it's an open pit. You have to do some damage to the surface, but the idea is to mitigate it as much as possible. And this is where discussions with the communities in the area, with the indigenous in the area, with the governments, and just proper planning and everything that goes into it. One of the things that I've even heard too is that there could be a benefit to having a lower grade open pit than having a higher grade open pit because of dust or things like that, but also environmental issues with any water. With the higher grade uranium can cause issues. So these are things, to be honest, that are on our agenda. We do plan to start tackling some of these and looking into more detail, since we are strongly convicted that Accio will go forward. But at the point that we are right now, we're still exploration. We don't know how much uranium is in the ground there, how long it's going to take us to figure that out. No ideas. But we're fairly comfortable that northern Saskatchewan has been a place for numerous open pits in the past. We do like to believe that the will and desire from Indigenous and from the government is still there to allow that to happen. And it's an economic scenario to give employment and business opportunities to the Indigenous within the area as well. So it is there's always some catches. There's always, some things look good, some things look bad. It's life.
I think there would be more attention for that now too, based on what happened in the 70s in the US, where the Indigenous community is still suffering from that, based on documentaries that I've seen. I've never been there to ask them, but especially the dust of open pit mines that you're mentioning could do a lot of damage to communities around that. And I also remember that Shadow had issues not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe you can update me on that. Have you spoken to the groups? Are you doing anything? What are you going to be doing and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to update you. To be very honest, there's nothing still going forward. We have talked with the chief. So they had re-elections earlier this year. The Chief Sylvester got re-elected. Very happy to hear that. I like Chief Sylvester. We've had some very good talks originally, and yeah, we've talked since his re-election. He's aware of our plans to move Shadow forward, and basically where we left off with a phone call, said he was going to discuss it with the council. We followed up with a letter to him and the council. Again, just kind of outlining our plans. We're just looking to fly an airborne survey, and we haven't heard anything back. Which now that the summer doldrums are kind of gone, we are going to be moving that forward with more communication, just trying to get a hold of the chief and council again, and trying to get some in-person community meetings rolling again.
Okay, this type of conversation really helps you understand that there's a lot more to it than grade, and just reading the headline grade and being like, oh, this is going to work, or no, it's Athabasca, it's not going to work. There's a bunch of other things that have to work as well before you can move. Well, I guess also you need a lot more data to get to a resource estimate to know if it's really economically feasible. You probably need more pounds too, right? Before you can call this a potential mine, right?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
I think pounds will be the big thing. I think with what we've seen based on the results that we put out, like some of our bigger intercepts, we see the grade is there. We see the widths are there. So yeah, I think, to be honest, what it really comes down to is just the pounds in the ground. That's what we really need to figure out. But obviously with some of the higher grades, we've seen that increases pounds quite quickly.
So, but the project area, what is that, 350 to 150 um meters, something along those lines?
Yep.
Is that about right?
Yep.
So how do you increase the pounds within that structure? You need higher grade then.
Higher grade, better definition on the extents of some of those pods that we're seeing. Finding another pod, which is going to be very high on our agenda for next year, is we're looking at a number of exploration targets that we think are very beneficial. And I've said many times that we think that the mineralization continues to the south, and we've got reason to believe so. And we'll be updating on that hopefully next week with a video presentation to show why we believe that. But yeah, we think there's still a lot of exploration potential even to the east, still with the unconformity. So we do have to put more time and effort into the exploration side of things, but not taking away from doing some definition drilling and trying to hit more of the high grade, confirm. That's going to be priority one. That's going to be the big focus, is just let's grow the high grade shells as much as possible, as quickly as possible. That's obviously where your tonnage is going to come from.
Mm-hmm. I also noticed that you so far have reported only on 28 out of the 44 drill holes that have hit. So you've drilled a total of 78. 44 of those have hit mineralization, if I'm not mistaken. But so you've got a number of holes still coming out. When's the rest coming out, and which holes is that data on?
No idea. Unfortunately, it's a game of patience with the lab this year. They've had quite a number of turnaround on their staffing side of things, so there's been some pretty big delays. But we're patiently holding on, waiting for results to come in. If you've noticed in some of our releases, or in our releases, we have skipped holes. I believe it's 12 through 19, I think. That we don't have complete assay results. We've got partial assay results back from each of those holes, but nothing complete to put out in a news release. So it's kind of been like a triage system at the lab that because we've been sending samples on a weekly basis, that they have probably just been taking from the top and running assays that way. But I'm hoping that they will be getting those done and back to us within the next 6 to 8 weeks at most. Fingers are crossed.
Okay, 6 to 8 weeks. Why I'm asking this, because I'm trying to calculate something else. I think that out of the so those 78 holes, that was over 22,000 meters, 22,500 meters. How much of the property do you think you have explored so far? Like what percentage would you guess you have explored?
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. Wow. And so you've reported on about 36% of 1%. Okay, so you have a lot more to, place to be looking for extra pounds. Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's what I was trying to figure out. Okay, in percentages, it's really low. Okay.
Well, if you follow what we did from day one, so last year when we started exploration on Hook, we went to the Beckett target area first. We drilled six holes into that area, 7 holes into that area, and we hit radioactive pegmatites. Like we know there's significantly thick radioactive pegmatites there, and we're pretty confident those would trace up to surface. There was some very encouraging alteration, and even some secondary uranium on some of the fractures there, which kind of indicate to us that there could be more in that area. There could be something, I believe it would be deeper just based on the alteration, but we'd be looking at about 300 meters depth at that point. But even the radioactive pegmatites themselves are quite encouraging, because if you go southwest of where we are, then you've got the Fraser Lakes radioactive pegmatites, which they've got, 5 million pounds U3O8 that in pegmatites that go up to surface. Low grade material, 0.03 type of like Rossing, basically, like Rossing pegmatites. So we hit on Beckett, and then we hit on Acula, and then we also now hit on this nickel thing, pending assay results. But so I think we've been quite successful with our exploration strategy, and some of the targets that we've been wanting to get to. Even this year, we wanted to hit more on the exploration side of things, but we kept having really good exploration success at Accio alone. So we decided to put all of our dollars, all of our meters into that area, because that's obviously what's going to drive the company.
Do you think there's a reason for you to test ISR potential at all at any of those properties?
No, not at
Just too
all.
shallow?
Nope. No, it has nothing to do with shallow. It has everything to do with the rock types.
Hmm.
ISR is amenable to sandstones because the fluids will percolate through sandstones preferentially, and the right type of sandstones, like what you see in the States and in Australia and Kazakhstan, which is why ISR works perfectly out there. They've just got the right geological formations and traps already in place. Won't work here.
Hmm.
Uh, it's not something that I would want to go forward with and try to test that. There's too many faults, too many fractures, too many different waterways for these fluids to move. Too much in the way of different clay contents that could act as impermeable barriers and shunt your fluids different directions. It's too much of a gong show down at Accio. So it's got to be conventional mined.
Okay, well, that's pretty straightforward. That about does it. Let's talk about more specifically though about what you're going to be testing during your next tour program. If maybe if you can talk to me about when, what, how, the price of it. With the ever rising inflation too. I guess this tour program is going to be more expensive than the previous one. So what can you tell me about all of that?
And that's one reason why we have decided to defer exploration until the springtime.
Hmm.
Because we started in February, we actually started in January this year, putting our camp in and we started drilling in February, which was in the winter time, which is not a typical good time to start with helicopter support. We're still going to continue with the helicopter support because we're very happy with what we've done in those regards. But we're going to defer and not drill during the winter months simply because looking at what we had spent previously, those were by far our most expensive months. So we were not doing shareholders justice by by every meter that we were drilling cost more than what we were doing in the summertime because you've got to put more fuel into heating up your camp, into heating up your drills and the coil stoves and just everything else. And there's so many variables, especially in the wintertime, that just consume a lot of operational costs. So we'll remove that from the from the equation and stick to spring, summer, fall. So basically around mid-March to let's say October. So we can still get a very healthy 6 months, 7 month of drill exploration in similar to what we did now, but having it more cost effective, more time efficient, more meters being drilled with doing it later in the season. We've also got catharsis though. So we do have catharsis. We've got shadow. Now we touched on shadow, and I did shadow. Even if we flew an airborne survey over shadow this year, we would not prioritize it to be explored this winter, this coming winter. We would probably push it back to summer 2023, winter 2024. We've got catharsis, and catharsis has some wonderful targets on it. We've flown a number of airborne geophysics over it last year and this year and compiling everything. We're still in the midst of that. And it looks great. So that's going to be our winter exploration program first, just because we know that that is a project that will not require helicopter support. We're right by the highway. Basically, our targets are within 2 to 10 kilometers from the indigenous that we've spoken to. They wouldn't mind having trails put in, which would allow them to encourage them to go into different areas for trapping and for hunting. So it benefits the communities that way as well. And just so if we can get that done in the winter, just a small little modest program, 2,000 meters, 4,000 meters, and drilling some interesting targets out there. If we're successful, great. If we're not, it's exploration for you.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask about catharsis, so that it's good that I have an update on it. Do you think you're gonna do all that work regardless of the uranium market, though? I mean, of the equities uranium market, basically, because I remember you sort of pumped the brakes on it when the uranium market wasn't doing as well. So, are you still gonna do as much work if uranium is not doing well by then?
We'll see. It also depends how much cash we'll have in the treasury. So right now we've got no flow through commitments, which was another reason to kind of put the brakes on that.
Yep.
We had nothing but working capital dollars in our account. So as we were drilling through and the markets were crashing, we were burning our hard dollars to see a decrease, significant decrease in our market cap, and even with the great results that we put out. So yeah, it just made sense to let's just put a hold on, which I think has been extremely beneficial for us because we've been sitting back, accumulating all the data and working with it, waiting for the assays to come in, which, like I said, are much better than the scintillometer results. So it puts a lot of things into perspective for us. So it's no, it's been great, very beneficial on our end. But yeah, to move forward, it's all capital based, really. If the markets do turn south again, then yes, that's going to be a question that will have to be answered at that time. But as it stands right now, seeing that the way that the world has completely reversed, everyone's done a 180. It's beautiful. Thank you, world, for finally accepting nuclear energy. I've been believing in nuclear energy for half my life. It's great energy source, but hearing Germany saying, "Oh yeah, we can't shut down all of our last reactors," and hearing California really pushing hard to keep Diablo Canyon on, it's great. So I think maybe the world can collapse, but nuclear energy, I think, will still be on the up and up.
It should be. It's definitely reality. So I guess it should be. When it comes down to raising money, especially if you have to raise money during hard times, though, you have a history of raising money through flow through shares, which happened to hurt the shareholders at one point not too long ago. And I mean, on your last raise, are you considering that internally? Or I mean, are you discussing how you're going to do it and how you're not going to do it right now?
Well, it's not that we have to raise flow through. It is beneficial to the company. It's a great asset for Canadians, or for Canadian companies on the exploration side of things. It's very beneficial to the companies. Yes, it does hurt shareholders, especially what I've seen happening a lot across the board. Just as soon as flow through placements are done, they're just massive shorts are happening, and it's kind of out of our hands. But yeah, I don't agree with it, but I can understand why people do it.
Yeah,
and that's it's really kind of out of our hands. But we would be looking to hopefully put a flow through placement into hands of people that would not want to short us over, or well, it's. So, but that is kind of the plan. We obviously wouldn't want to do a full flow through placement. We would still like to cash up with some more working capital hard dollars. And how we break it down. Do we do 50-50? What amount are we trying to raise? And these are all questions that are being discussed internally, because now is the time to really cash up. If we believe Accio is what it is and will be the next mine in the Athabasca, we got to hit it hard. We got to hit this thing fast. And so we're going to need the cash to do so.
I agree. And why I'm asking you these questions specifically is because I'm wondering whether it's realistic for you to pull a Paladin during this cycle, meaning keep the share structure relatively tight while making an economic discovery, developing it, and producing pounds of uranium within one cycle. And I get, I know most, it's not that I guess, I know most CEOs would not give me an honest answer because it's their company, but I know you would. You're very straightforward and frank. So what do you think the probability of that happening for Baselode is?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. Paladin had a great advantage of being in Africa. When it comes to moving things along, especially in the uranium space, I see Africa as being a problem-free area, that their governments are supportive. They can move things along at a very rapid pace, no issues. So Paladin was great. If Baselode could pull off a Paladin, man, I would be the happiest person in the world, and I would have achieved my absolute objective that I've been wanting to do for a number of years. So am I going to push for it? You better believe I'm going to push hard for this. I'm already looking at environmental, everything that we need on the environmental side, on the mining side, without even having a resource. I want to get all of our ducks in line, have this nice flow through or flow chart in place to say, hit these steps, hit them fast, hit them hard. Let's get this thing let's get it mined. Let's just get it mined. But we got to think on the regulatory side, and in Canada, Saskatchewan, lot of variables, but we want to address those variables now, not 2 years down the road.
Are there any other companies that you think have the same or maybe higher probability of achieving something similar to that, albeit in or outside of the basin, or even in or outside of the continent, as you mentioned?
Ooh, I to be a paladin or just get a deposit into production.
To really pull off a Paladin, which is I when everybody mentions Paladin because it went from 10 cents to 1 cent and then to $10. I I just assume that the best performers during this cycle are going to be companies that do the same. And then on the second best performers would be the companies that bring something into production and actually, turn a cash flowing business from being a non-cash flowing business to being a cash flowing business within the cycle is still pretty decent. And I guess those
Yeah,
companies will perform well on the stock exchange too. So that's what I'm asking.
yeah. I don't know if anybody could be a paladin. Geez, who the heck is that one company? Another African company. What do they have? Oh, why am I drawing a blank? It's not Global Atomic, but Global Atomic is, it's my favorite. Aside from
GoviX,
Baselode. No, it's not GoviX. Ah, geez.
Bannerman.
Murray Hill's on it. Bannerman's great too, but
I think it might be referencing Elevate Uranium. By the way, I just remembered that right now.
that's the one. There
It's
we
because they
go. Yep.
changed their name. It's this way you can't remember them. That's why I was losing their name too. Okay, no, that's interesting to mention that. Most people who work within the Athabasca Basin that I've spoken to, most CEOs are like Athabasca or nothing else. And but in the end, it just has to make business sense. I really like that about you
Yeah.
is that you just want this to make business sense and to have a good profit margin, which is
That's
yeah.
that was what we set out to do. That was Athabasca 2.0. That
Hmm.
was the whole reasoning behind it because we saw all these deposits being discovered in the basin itself, and they just don't move.
Hmm.
They've been there for decades upon decades,
Yeah.
and there's some more recent discoveries that are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal deposits that should be mined, but they can't because of the water issues. So now they're waiting on unproven technologies.
Hmm.
And how long is it going to take to prove up those technologies to be able to mine out those resources? I don't have an idea. So
Yeah.
why not go back to conventional mining that, you kind of have a guideline on how fast it can go based on historics, 6 to 12 years, you can go from discovery into production. Now, sure, that was between the 50s, 60s, 70s, and maybe even more recently as the 90s and 2000s. The MacArthur River, that moved fast. From discovery to production of MacArthur, that was an incredibly fast mine. That was an underground mine. So can it be done? I'd love to believe it can.
Yo, let's hope you're right, James. I appreciate this conversation. It's been a good update. I don't have any further questions. But is there something that you had hoped we'd talk about and I failed to bring up?
No, I think you've done great as usual. Great questions. Yeah, hopefully I've answered and keep people interested in baseload, the Accio discovery moving forward, baseload's future exploration, which I've got a lot of high hopes for. But I'm an explorationist. I always have high hopes.
That's a good disclaimer right there. Well, thank you. Thank you for sitting down with me, James.
Always a pleasure. Thanks.